Hey, how's it going, everyone? We're live. This is Unlearn, brand new series about unlearning against learning. This is episode 4. The date is March 3rd, 2021, and the topic is the universal electromagnetic Roman priesthood and why it matters, and how well, we'll get into it. Pretty much how where is it? Pornography is Roman Catholic celibacy. All right. So are we live? Window capture. All right. Read Romans. How's it going? All right. I'm going to just make sure everyone gets in here. I fell asleep waiting. I fell asleep waiting as well. All right. Okay, let's get into it. So we're gonna just, instead of so this has nothing to do with like of course the subtitle is about pornography and stuff, but it really has nothing to do with like the act of masturbation or anything. It has to do with like what exactly Jesuit order has to get done as the Counter-Reformation, which would be to make everyone a Jesuit, right? So they have to make everyone do what they do, and so how would they get that done, right? Well, we're gonna first establish what the Roman priest is, and then how we're seeing it culminate today. I mean, pretty much everything we've always talked about, but we're getting into the specifics. Okay? All right. So this book, what is this book? So we're going to be talking about what is celibacy. What is the Roman celibacy? You know, they talk about chastity and celibacy and being celibate and stuff. You know, you don't marry. Is that really what it is? No? It's easy to say, well, it's just the opposite. It's just the opposite. It's the, you know, I don't know what you would call it. The opposite of that, evil. All right, so let's get into it. This is from Samuel Edgar's The Variations of Popery, 1855. And we're on page 557. And this is a chapter on the Roman celibacy or something. I forget what the chapter name is. It's the last chapter in the book. We're like halfway through the chapter. We're not going to read the whole chapter. I just want you to get an idea of what exactly the Roman Catholic Church wants for us all. The Counter-Reformation. All right? So, is this fully zoomed out? Whatever. So we'll just read it, okay? This is like picking up like halfway through. So it says a third variety of the evasion, or rather for the infraction of these canonical interdictions, was clandestine or avowed matrimony. Some of these priests, though they could ill afford it, wished to keep a conscience. These, of course, would shudder at the commission of fornication or adultery, and had recourse, therefore, to the honorable institution of heaven for the prevention of such pollution. These, entrenched behind the authority of God, withstood the commandments of men. The number of these continued to increase the opposition to the decretals of popes, the canons of councils, and the prepositions of the people. Okay? Or the prepossessions of the people. The frequent repetitions of these prohibitions showed their inefficiency and clerical obstinacy. The indictory or interdictory councils were all provincial, many of them contemptible, and ecclesiastics continued to marry in despite of their regulations. The priesthood in general, at the accession of Gregory VII, in defiance of obsolete laws, lived in a state of matrimony. Okay, such was the state of clerical matrimony at the accession of Hildebrand or Gregory VII to the popedom in 1074. The reign of this hierarch commenced a new era in the annals of sacerdotal celibacy. Gregory enforced celibacy with a high hand among the Latin ecclesiastics and was supported in the undertaking by many of the laity. The attempt, however, was long opposed by the priesthood, and its success terminated in the general concubinage and debauchery of the Western clergy. Gregory succeeded, to a great extent, in the suppression of priestly marriage. Several of his predecessors had made a similar attempt, but in vain. Stephen, Nicholas, and Alexander had labored for this purpose and failed, but Gregory proceeded in this, as in every other design, with superior ability and resolution, and his efforts were crowned in the end with wonderful success. He summoned a council and issued canons separating the married clergy from their partners and forbidding the ordination of any who would not vow perpetual continence. He prohibited the laity from hearing mass when celebrated by a married priest. These enactments he enforced with his usual obstinacy and with his usual success. The laity in general, here we'll zoom in. The laity in general seemed to have seconded the efforts of the pontiff. These in many instances refused the administration of baptism and the communion from the married clergy. Laymen administered baptism and offered trampled the bread and spilled the wine which had been consecrated for sacramental use by married clergymen. The clergy opposed the pontiff with all their might. Paris relates characterized priestly celibacy and continence as an innovation and a rash judgment contrary to the sentence of the Holy Fathers. One says the English historian contended for equity and the other against it, while the consequence was scandal and division in the church, so that no greater schism produced by any heresy. Lambert and other historians have transmitted similar accounts. The clergy says the annalists were raged and called Gregory the patron of heresy and the abettor of a mad system, who by violence would compel men to live like angels, stop the course of nature, and give the slackened reins to all pollution. Okay, so think about that for us today. The clergy also, in retaliation, accused the pontiff of incest with Matilda, Countess of Mantua, who say Marius and Charon was a woman of extraordinary superstition and great effrontery then became her sex. Similar dissensions on this question took place in 1075 at the Council of Erfurt in Germany. The Archbishop of Mainz, prompted by the pontiff, required the assembled clergy either to abandon their wives or the ministry of the altar. The ecclesiastics who sat round the archbishop chose neither alternative. They first confounded their diocesan with words, which again were soon followed by blows as the more efficient argument. The archbishop in the end was so maltreated that he despaired of his life and wisely resolved to co-sign the enforcement of the celibacy to his holiness. So that was 1,000 years ago, guys. That was 1,000 years ago that the inner circle of Babylon became celibate universally. And then, because of course it all goes back to like the Great White Brotherhood of the Snake at Heliopolis, which turned into like the Essenes and stuff, and then the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they were all celibate and shit. So, you know, now we're seeing it become 1,000 years later for everyone universally all around the world. The catechumen, the layman, the infidel, the heretic, the unintelligent, like people like you and me, right? People, right? So it's for the outer circle now. This is the Counter-Reformation, 1,000 years in the working. So continuing on, but resistance to Gregory was vain. He projected the subjugation of Christendom, which is just Roman Catholicism, and executed his plan with matchlessness, resolution, and success. He employed all means foul and fair, and wielded in turn cannons, decretals, threats, violence, arms, fraud, flattery, anathemas, and excommunication. Pretended miracles, too, were made the agents of his ambition. Pretended miracles, think about theater, right? Theater, Ignatian spiritual exercises, imagination. Though these, in an age of ignorance and barbarism, were when forgery and nonsense passed from truth and reason, possessed in the hand of superstition, irresistible power and efficacy. His infallibilities, lying wonders, ridiculous in themselves, were infragable when addressed to an unlettered and superstitious populace. That's exactly what the population is now. Superstitious, right? Believing in nothing but imagination and wonders, right? And he shall, cause great miracles and wonders so he may deceive the world by bringing fire down from the sky, things like that. The clergy had to yield to the pontiff any reason to tyranny. Such was the rigor of ecclesiastical laws in the popish communion against sacerdotal matrimony. But this communion, which was so severe against wedlock in the clergy, was in a very extraordinary degree indulgent to concubinage, both in the clergy and laity. Any person, clergyman or layman, according to the Council of Toledo, Spain, in its 17th canon, who has not a wife but a concubine, is not to be repelled from the communion, from the commune. And what is the commune right now? It's this quarantine, this electromagnetic wireless commune, the internet that we've all been forced into. One way or another, right? Step by step. The great Jesuit reduction, one last time. So, if he be content with one, the holy bishops indeed in their wisdom would not allow two men to one man, but any Christian, according to the prelency of Spain, might at pleasure keep either a wife or a mistress. This, no doubt, was very liberal and obliging in the sacred synod. But His Holiness Pope Leo was not to be outdone by the episcopacy in compliance and liberality. His infallibility, the Vicar General of God, confirmed in the kindest manner and with the utmost courtesy the Council of Toledo and the act of the Spanish prelacy. The Toledan canon and its pontifical confirmation were equally wicked and ridiculous. The wickedness of the enactment appears in its contrariety to the law of God, and indeed in general to the code of all civilized nations. Its ridiculousness is also apparent. The permission extends to every person, or according to one edition of the sacred canon, to the faithful comprising all Christians. The expression, Guianan has observed, comprehended at one time the clergy as well as the laity. A man at will might keep a woman or either character, and he might therefore show his taste in this freedom of variety. But the holy legislators would not allow two women to one man. 2. The Spanish fathers thought would be superabundance of this species of livestock. But the Christian whose humor inclined him to an unmarried rather than to a married mistress might gratify his taste and at the same time continue one of the faithful and be admitted to the communion. So, absolute insanity. Such was the hopeful decision of the Spanish Council and the Roman Pontiff. But ridiculous as it is, this is not all. The enactment of the Council and the Pope has been inserted in the Romish body of the canon law edicted by Gratian and Pithou. Gratian's compilation, indeed, was a private production, unauthenticated by any pope, but Pithou published by the command of Gregory XIII, and his work contains the acknowledged canon law of the Romish Church. His edition is accredited by pontifical authority and recognized through popish Christendom. Fornication, therefore, is sanctioned by the Spanish Council and Roman Pontiff and the canon law. So one by one, we're breaking down what celibacy actually is. Chastity of the vow of chastity of the Jesuits in the Roman priest, right? Fornication in this manner was, in the clergy, not only tolerated, but also preferred to matrimony. You hear that? I hope there's Roman Catholics watching. You've been deceived. Many of the popish causes, which are the Jesuits, okay? Campeggio, Jesuit. Costerus, Jesuit. I don't know who these guys are. I might be getting whatever. It doesn't matter. The casuistry is created by the Jesuits. Many of the popish causes, such as Costerus, Piguius, Hosius, Campagio, and those reported by Agrippa, raised whoredom above wedlock in the hierarchy. Right? Costerus admits that a clergyman sins if he commit fornication, but more heinously if he marry. Concubinage, the Jesuit grants, is sinful, but less aggravated, he maintains, than marriage. Costerus was followed by Figius and Hosius. Campagio proceeded to still greater extravagancy. He represented a priest who became a husband as committing a more grievous transgression than if he should keep many domestic harlots. An ecclesiastic, rather than marry, should, according to the precious divine, keep a seraglio. The cardinal gives an odd reason for his theory. The clergyman, he affirms, who perpetrates whoredom acts from a persuasion of its rectitude or legality, while the other knows and acknowledges his criminality. So the other person doesn't know, but the other person does know. That's called invincible ignorance, according to the Jesuits, which to them is philosophical sin, invincible ignorance, right? I choose not to believe it that way, so it's not a sin. Divination. The priesthood, therefore, in Campagio's statement, are convinced of the propriety of fornication. Agrippa draws a similar character of the legislators who enacted the laws of celibacy and who, according to this author, would rather have clergymen fornicators in infamy than husbands in honesty. This, in this 16th century, was a frightful fact of which the Emperor Maximilian and other German prince, and this is the emperor, this is the Holy Roman Emperor, right? The protector of the temporal power of the papacy, and other German princes complained, at which, with good reason, they dominated a glaring absurdity. The clergy who married were dismissed from the exercise of the sacred functions, while the sacerdotal fornicators who violated the laws of God and man were allowed to retain the holy ministry. So you got to think about this today. The clergy, they're trying to make everyone the clergy, who married were dismissed for the exercise of sacred functions. So you're not allowed to pretty much be in the commune anymore. And you're also not allowed to leave the commune and just like, if you disagree with the people in the commune, you can't just leave, right? You can't leave the commune. We have to kill you. We have to kill you. You're not allowed to leave. You know? There is no leaving. There is no whatever. Sacerdotal, so it says sacerdotal concubinage, accordingly, prior to the Reformation, was the common usage and less offensive in the eyes of the papacy and the populace than clerical matrimony. The ecclesiastics of the papal commune, or communion, indeed, since the days of Luther and Calvin, are in appearance at least, and in most nations become more circumspect and aim at a character of decency. This is one glorious effect of the Reformation. I don't know about that, but whatever. The popish doctors in this way not only indulge priestly fornicators, but also to encourage businesses honor their partners in trade. These useful allies of the priesthood are, according to Pope Paul III, the Jesuit pope, the last pope, and all the Romish doctors, comprehended in the ecclesiastical jurisdiction. These privileged patrons of prostitution belong to the sacred hierarchy and enjoy the right of exemption from secular legislation and authority. So they can prostitute without law. And they can whore and prostitute and, you know, do whatever they want without a law governing them. And what is pornography? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Right? Because there are no laws on the internet. Charles and the Second of Anjou. Anjou. This goes back to Anjou, goes back to Anu, which is Anunnaki, the seed of Cain, pretty much. Charles II of Anjou accordingly ordained that these polluted companions of the clergy should not, like the lady, forfeit the fourth and of their possessions. The base fornicatress, in this manner, enjoyed in the perpetration of filthiness and in the bosom of an infallible church, the exemptions and immunity of the ecclesiastical hierarchy. All this, however, is not the end of the comedy, or rather tragedy. The Roman pontiff and the Roman clergy have, on many occasions, proceeded to deeper enormity and authorized adultery and bigamy. Bossuet, Jesuit, has accused Luther, Melanchthon, Bucer, Adam, Lenin, Winford, and Melanchthon of encouraging bigamy and in the Landgrave Philip, and has, in the imputation, been followed by Veralas and Arnold. Luther and Melanchthon, what does that say? Melanchthon, whatever, erred in their instructions to Philip, but the directions of the reformers have, in this instance, been misstated and exaggerated by the Bishop of Moau, perceiving the obstinacy of the Landgrave. 7 theologians who had patronized the Reformation represented bigamy as less heinous than adultery and advised, in this case, the closest secrecy. Armdorf and Justice, however, as well as all other reformers, the priests deprecated even this advice or convenience or conveyance. And Luther learned this theology in the synod, or in the school of the Roman pontiffs and clergy. Right? So remember, Luther, Calvin, all of them. They're all had so much Roman Catholicism in them, right? They just came out of Rome. How can you expect them to be like exactly what the Bible says? I wouldn't have followed any of them. So it says a few specimens may be selected out of many for illustration. Gregory II, in all his infallibility, authorized bigamy, which in the Popist system is tantamount to adultery. Boniface, the celebrated apostle of Germany, had in 726 inquired of his holiness whether men whose wives were not dead, but incapacitated by infirmity, might again marry. His infallibility's reply is worthy of perpetual memory. He recommended continence indeed to such as possessed the gifts, but those unendowed with continence, which is a great attainment, might, according to the Viceroy of Heaven, again marry. So the Pope, right? This is a precious sample of pontifical casuistry, which is sophistry, right? His infallibility resolved the difficulty by sanctioning bigamy and adultery. Epiphanius, as has been already noticed, had taught the same inconsistency as Gregory, and the Roman pontiff followed the footsteps of the Grecian saint. Bellarmine, Jesuit Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, one of the authors of Futurism and Preterism and Ultramontanism, fascism, in this case, is contrary to his avowed system, constrained to grant the ignorance and error of Gregory. His holiness, no doubt, was very accommodating. He deserves the thanks of all husbands whose partners are disabled by debility. He was so liberal as to allow the man to judge when the woman to whom he is married is, through weakness, unfit for action. All, therefore, according to his infallibility system, may take a second companion when they think proper. So you can, so it's all just a joke. It's all just a lie. Everything they say is a lie. And it's all a lie to get away with everything else. The opposite of what, like, it's just so stupid. All, therefore, according to his infallibility. Okay, so Gregory's doctrine, however, is now rank heterodoxy in the Romish communion. The Council of Trent, the Jesuit Council of the Trident, of Poseidon, god of the sea, the holy sea, of all those lost in the sea, in its 24th session. So that would have been, whatever, I don't know. That would have been one of the last ones. Declared against the Vicar General of God. All right. So so remember, this is supposed to be the Pope, and then the Jesuits pretty much just destroyed everything that the Pope said. The Sacred Synod, without any ceremony, launched its anathemas against Gregory and his pestilential heresy, and sent the Viceregent of Heaven 800 years after his death to the abodes of the lost. The Roman pontiff's case was far more aggravated than the German reformers. The Lutheran pastor's opinion related only one person, and its author had no more authority than any other individual. The former referred to many and was delivered by the Vicar General of God, the head of the church, and to the teacher of all Christians. Gregory's decretal was couched in general terms and may, in its wide extension, comprehend all men. Many have invested its author with the attribute of infallibility, though the Council of Trent, in fine style and its exercise of its inerradibility, tossed an anathema at his devoted head. This whole book is written very like tongue in cheek. It's pretty funny. This pontiff theory was in 752 adopted by the Council of Vermia and Verberie. Pepin, the French king, oh here we go, with the French prelacy, was present in the assemble, which say Daniel and Veli gave a mortal blow to the indissolubility of the matrimonial chain. Okay, so the Gallican clergy allowed the privilege of repudiation and subsequent wedlock to the person who should marry a slave, right? A slave, a serf, who before the nuptial ceremony had pretended to be free. The Sacred Synod granted the same liberty to the man whose wife should conspire against his life or refuse to accompany him to a distant country, and to the woman whose husband should defile her sister or mother, or should through aversion or impotency neglect herself. Such were the decisions of the Pope Synod. These, unlike Lutheran instructions to the Hessian Landgrave, extended not merely to one but to many. The Saxon reformer, though he erred, was, as even the partial Bishop of Meaux might have seen, far less guilty than the Roman pontiff and Romish council. Charlemagne, with the contemporary Roman pontiff and French clergy, exemplified the theory of Pope Gregory in the Vermian Council. The French sovereign divorced Hilmiltrude, the daughter of the French nobleman, and married Bertha, a princess of Lombardy. This match, Pope Stephen feared, would ally the French and the Lombards against the Roman pontiff. He plied every means, therefore, reason, invective, menace, and flattery to prevent the union. His letter to Charles and Carloman on the occasion is one of the most senseless, silly, ridiculous, and disgusting monuments of antiquity. His infallibility warned the emperor of the pestilential blandishments of women, which had expelled man from paradise and entailed death on the human family, which is hilarious because we're supposed to be the covering for women. So, you know, man blames it on the woman blames it on the serpent. Right, always playing the victim. He eulogized the grandeur and celebrity of the Franks, who would be polluted by an alliance with the contemptible, leprous, and stinking Lombards, a nation without faith or religion. He mentioned the indissolubility of marriage and denounced the intended union as a diabolical confederacy. Charles and Carloman he adjured against the pending negotiations by the living God, the day of judgment, and the sacred body of Peter, the prince of the apostles. So he's talking about the Pope. Any who should disregard his adjuration, he anathematized by apostolical authority, banished from the kingdom of heaven, and co-signed to the devil to burn in everlasting fire. The king of Lombardy, however, soon pacified his holiness. He restored some places which he had taken from the ecclesiastical states, and this sop soon quieted the pontifical Cerberus. So that's like that's the three-headed wolf that guards Hades. He discontinued his opposition and talked no more of the allurements of women, the stench of the Lombards, the indissolubility of marriage, or the thunders of excommunication. Charles was united in peace to the princess of Lombardy. Bertha, however, like Hilmiltrud, was soon divorced to make way for Hildegard and a Suevian princess. Bertha, through infirmity, was unfit for having children. This diability, the French clergy, like Gregory, reckoned a sufficient reason for repudiation. Her impotency in the ingenious and honest interpretation of the Gallican clergy was equivalent to death. So you can see how, like, it's the kings and queens of the Roman Empire that are fighting against the Pope. So you can see, whatever. We'll so yeah, we'll continue. We'll just skip that because it's getting it's going off of whatever. Yeah. So it says, Pope Celestine in the end of the 12th century defined heresy to be a reason for the dissolution of marriage, as Gregory and the French clergy had admitted the plea of debility. The person, according to this pontiff, whose partner in life becomes guilty of heterodoxy, may, on account of this error in faith, choose another. Philip could not have proved the Landgraven a heretic, would have had the pontifical authority to transfer his hand and affections to an orthodox companion. Celestine's definition, however, is now, according to the Council of Trent, in its 24th session, a pestilent heresy. So there you go. Innocent the Fourth sanctioned bigamy without even the plea of heresy. Alphonsus of Portugal, about 1243, divorced his queen and espoused the Princess Beatrix. The repudiation and nuptials were authorized by a bull of His Holiness. The Roman pontiff remarks, Cariton Mariana's translator, with amusing simplicity, permitting such transactions at the same time with much greater facility than he would at the present day. The popish clergy, in the beginning of the 15th century, through superintended by the Roman pontiff, the universal pastor, permitted bigamy in Livonia. A man, says Henry, canon of Worms, was in the Livonian dominions allowed to have 2 living wives and the woman of plurality of and have a woman of plurality of husbands. The bishop of Meaux, had it agreed with his taste, might have discovered exemplifications of bigamy in his own communion without having recourse to the Reformation. Alexander, following the footsteps of his predecessors, issued bulls of repudiation and dispensation of marriage to the Ladislaus and Philip. Ladislaus, king of Hungary, divorced Beatrix of Aragon and married Anne of Foix. The separation from the one of the union with the other were, according to Mariana, by the express authority of His Holiness. So you can see all the kings and queens of the Roman kingdom following in suit. And let's see. Where is it? Hold on. So this guy says Clemens reckoned the adultery, impurity, and obscenity of the clergy beyond all description. These frequented the stews and taverns and spent their whole time in eating, drinking, reveling, gaming, and dancing. Surfeited and drunk, these sacerdotal sensualists fought, shouted, roared, rioted, and blasphemed God and the saints, and passed shortly after from the embrace of the harlot to the altar of God. The canons, like the priests, were ignorant and drunken. Clemagis, through shame, drew the curtain over the abominations that the nuns practiced in their convents, which he called brothels of licentiousness. To veil a woman was in that age to prostitute her. Holy shit. I mean, do you hear that, guys? Wearing the mask. I mean, all right. Mezery's portrait of clerical profligacy prior to the Reformation is similar to those of Bernard, Agrippa, Henry, and Climacus. The ecclesiastics, in the statement of the French historian, were nearly all fornicators and drunkards. The clergy had held their offices in taverns and spent their money in debauchery. So, like, pretty much. Look, Henry in Vienna, professor of theology and vice-chancellor of the Parisian University, draws in the 15th century a similar portrait. His description, copied by Lafont, extends to the Pope, the cardinals, the bishops, the priests, and the monks. He depicted the ignorance, pride, simony, and licentiousness of the pontiff, the cardinals, and the prelacy. The priests in his sketch practiced fornication and the monks wallowed in debauchery. Cathedrals became dens of thieves while monasteries were erected in taverns and places of prostitution. The dispensation of the clergy in Henry's estimation caused the corruption of Christendom and the obduracy of infidels. Agrippa accuses the prelacy of taxing the inferior clergy for liberty to violate the laws of chastity. I wonder what taxes are really for, right? Carbon taxes. You must go back in your house. Carbon taxes. Stop stop breaking the laws of chastity of Rome. You're going to be taxed on it. Right? Oh shit. Damn, son. A bishop on one occasion boasted of having his diocese 11,000 priests who have severely paid their superior every year a guinea for leave to keep concubines. Licenses for this kind indeed were common in many of the European kingdoms. Compelled by enormity of the evil, the Council of Basel at length in its 20th session issued a canon interdicting such abominations on pain of excommunication and eternal malediction of God. Oh, these observations have been verified. Yeah, so what did I'm literally reading the book backwards now. I'll read this. The laxicity of Romanism on the one hand and its privations on the other introduced shocking impurity into its communion. The interdiction of marriage on the conveyance of concubinage and the priesthood became the polluted fountains of multiplied abominations which inundated the popedom and swelled the annals of ecclesiastical history. The clergy forsook the sanctuary of wedlock for the sty of fornication and adultery. Gregory's enactments, according to Aventinius, afforded signal gratification to the wandering votary of sensuality who, in the restlessness of unsettled libertinism, relinquished one woman for the sake of 100. One woman for the sake of 100. So, but men who were actuated by conscience or a sense of propriety regarded the innovation as a pestilential heresy which arose to trouble Christendom. The clergy who resisted Gregory's enactments against marriage declared that the tendency of such interdictions was to open the floodgates of filthiness and give the slackened reins to fornication and defilement. Agrippa, in more modern days, draws a similar picture and represents whoredom as the necessary effect of prohibiting honorable marriage. Polydorus, agreeing with Agrippa and Gregory's clergy, depicts celibacy as calculated to dishonor the priesthood, injure religion, and grieve all good men. Matrimony, he remarks, is far more useful to the Christian commonwealth. These general details may be corroborated by a particular retrospective priestly inconsonance before the rise of Protestantism. In England, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, France, Italy, and Peru, the accounts are furnished in abundance by the contemporary popish historians and councils. Forden has copied the description of Edgar, the English sovereign, from Arnold of Reval. This is similar to the outline of Gildas. The British monarch in the 10th century assembled the British clergy and in a speech addressed to the full convocation drew the frightful portrait. These churchmen, His Majesty told them to their face, were lascivious in dress, insolent in manner, and filthy in conversation. The time of these heralds of the gospel was devoted to revels, inebriation, debauchery, and abomination. Their abodes were the haunts of harlots and the scenes of the ply, the dance of the song, which in noisy dissipation were prolonged till midnight or till morning. Paris in the 11th century at the accession of Gregory VII gives a report similar to those of Gildas and forwarding, he represents a few of the observance of continents, but he characterizes the majority as adding incontinence to perjury and multiplied adultery. Spain was as defiled as England. This is testified by many historians and among others by Alvarez in the councils of Valladolid and Toledo. One fact noticed by Alvarez, a Spanish author on the subject, conveys a striking idea of the Spanish nation and priesthood. The sons of the Spanish clergy in the beginning of the 14th century were in a number nearly equal to those of the laity. The ecclesiastics and their mistresses, it seems, were sufficiently prolific. The clergy, in all likelihood, were successful in the production of natural progeny as of a spiritual offering. These priests would rise from the harlot's embrace and proceed without delay or even confession to the altar of God. The testimony of the Council of Valladolid in its 17th canon in 1322 is to the same purpose. The clergy, prodigal of the character of and salvation, led accordingly to this assembly lives of enormity and profligacy and public concubinage. The canon of Valladolid was renewed in 1473 in the Council of Toledo. The synod represented the clergy as living in the filthiest atrocity, which rendered them contemptible to the people. Some of the priests guilty of fornication feared not to touch the body of the Lord, with polluted hands. The merelessness and temperance of the Spanish clergy appears in the history of the sacerdotal and monkish solicitation in the kingdom. These solicitors were Spanish monks and priests who, abusing the privacy of sacramental confession, tempted women and married and unmarried to a violation of chastity and, in the language of Pope Gregory, quote, administered poison instead of medicine, end quote. This kind of solicitation became so prevalent as to demand pontifical interposition. Its notoriety accordingly challenged the interference of Pius, Clement, Gregory, Alexander, and Benedict, who issued their bulls against this kind of seduction. The publication of the papal enactments showed the extent of the evil. The execution of the Roman mandates was co-signed to the inquisitors who summoned the attendance at the holy office of all that could inform against the guilty. The terror of the Inquisition commanded obedience. Maids and matrons of the nobility and peasantry of every rank and situation crowded to the Inquisition. Modesty and shame induced many to go veiled. The alarm awakened jealousy in the mind of many husbands. The fair informers in Seville alone were, according to Gonsalves and Lorente, so numerous that all the inquisitors and 20 notaries were insufficient in 30 days to take their dispositions. 30 additional days had 3 several times to be appointed for the reception of informations, but the multitude of criminals, the jealousy of husbands, and the odium which the discovery threw on auricular confession in the popish priesthood caused the sacred tribunals to quash the prosecution and to co-sign the dispositions to oblivion. So they said, there's too much. We don't care anymore. So it goes on and on. Here, hold on. Debauchery as it covered the ecclesiastics with infamy. 100 priests, so general was the contagion. Guys? Could hardly muster 3 or 4 who obeyed the injunctions of chastity. The French applauded the ambassador's speech. The council, also by its prompter, joined the French eulogy and styled the Duke of Bavaria bulwark of the popedom. So it goes on and on in every country. Chastity is the opposite. Adultery, fornication, prostitution, Says the select council of cardinals and bishops assembled by Paul III in 1538 have drawn a picture of the Roman courtesans and the attention paid them by the Roman clergy. These courtesans lived in splendid palaces, walked or rode as matrons through the city, and were attended at noonday by a train. The Roman clergy and nobility, the friends of the cardinals. The Roman priesthood in this manner made a public exhibition of their filthiness and infamy. The Roman pontiffs were often as filthy as their clergy and exemplified every species of licentiousness and pollution. Some of these hierarchs licensed stews and raised a tax on these houses of iniquity. These vice-regents of heaven exacted a tribute for their permission of impurity. The Pope's marshal in many instances received the revenue from the Roman courtesans and enriched the sacred treasury with the wages of prostitution. Some of the pontiffs converted the Roman court into a scene of pollution. The Lateran Palace which had been a sanctuary, became a brothel. And then it goes through all the popes. Yeah, so we're going to read this, The Power of Rome. Okay? So it all goes back to, so like they want everyone to be quarantined in their commune, and they want you to, pretty much just rely on the internet. I mean, that's the end goal, right? You can't monetize the internet though. Impossible. It's an idea, right? So anyways, this is the Jesuit president again, the Jesuit Cherie Conference, right? Jesuit president, Jesuit novitiate, Jesuit Church, Santo Antonio Abate, Cherie, Italy, 1825. This was attended by the highest officials of the Jesuit order, including the 2 Jesuit superior generals and multiplied European Jesuit provincials, vice provincials, regional assistants, Jesuit and institutional presidents and rectors, overheard and written down by the pen of ex-Jesuit Jacopo Leone in his book, The Jesuit Conspiracy, The Secret Plan of the Order, London, 1848. So he says this. Okay? He says, this is really what we're talking about, because they're trying to make the youth the Jesuits. It's always been about the Jesuit order. They were created to educate the youth. And from there on, they can take over the world. So, one measure at which I have indeed already hinted at, which must be brought under discussion, is in itself calculated to produce admirable results. It is one which would have for its object to relieve priests from the too heavy burden of real celibacy, duono vero celibato. You well know that if ever a breach is opened on this side, if ever a considerable portion of the clergy urged on by the secular power which might be interested in such a change should demand the right to marry, the whole hierarchical edifice would crumble away stone by stone until nothing remained of the church. You hear that? There you go. That's the fundamental power of Rome, is the celibacy, the fornication and prostitution. It's not anything else but this. If once the question came to be generally entertained, the dispute would grow hot and everybody would be asking, when did ecclesiastical celibacy begin? Its history would be investigated and the marble covering which has been lying for ages over its mysteries would be wholly removed. And we just read about it, right? Scruples, remorse, and reaction would spring up and spread like an epidemic. Rome would resist most certainly, for the very foundations of Catholicism would be in danger, but a growing irritation would everywhere find some object to fasten upon. Inquiry would proceed to other matters besides celibacy, and in all probability a formidable league would be formed which would address this question to the Pope: where are your titles to command the church and the clergy? Thus there would be revolt upon revolt, and the Holy See, beset on all sides, would have to sustain the sorest fight it had ever waged. And that's one of the points Martin Luther put in his 98 Theses. The celibacy of the priesthood is a joke. It is therefore highly expedient that we should connect with the celibacy of the clergy as many interests as possible, like so many spokes of a wheel around its axis. And like the wheel in the St. Peter's Basilica, the womb with the phallus coming out of it, it's a sex symbol. Astrology wheel? I don't know. For I repeat to you, brethren, if this institution should come to be overthrown, where is the dogma that will long survive it? Where is the dogma that will long survive it? The internet. As in a house of cards, the fall of one single card is followed by that of the whole construction. So should celibacy fall to the ground. Down will fall confession, mass, and purgatory. All pomp will vanish from our worship. All glory will depart from our priesthood, and the mines from which we have drawn such rich supplies will be henceforth closed to us. Maintain celibacy, fornication, adultery, prostitution, temple prostitution, the sensory imagination, through electronic pixels on a black mirror. It doesn't get more insane than this. And our course will be one interrupted triumph. Suffer it to fall, and what a destiny will be ours. We shall be, as it were, transfixed, with wounds shamefully mutilated, our every project torn to pieces in our hands. Quod abissit. We must, however, expect all this, if by some powerful measure we do not prevent so great a calamity. Since we are occupied in forging so many revelations and miracles, would it not be possible? Great things proceed sometimes from small beginnings, to compose a little work which should breathe the purest perfume of sanctity, and which should at first be cautiously and secretly circulated. It might be convinced in some such terms as these: the church is entering upon dangerous times. Upon its fall or its consolidation hinges the end of the continuance of the world. The COVID-19. COVID-19, right? Pandemic. Synonym for Catholic. Look it up. Ecumenical. An era of glory yet unheard of will open for the clergy, if it will lend an ear to what God reveals to it by saint. This revelation must be made in the same name, in some saint of recent date. What is the what is it? Saint Corona? It's a real saint. The strength which the clergy will derive from it is immense. So the strength which the clergy will derive from it is immense. It will teach them supernatural secrets, to throw down heresy and to build up the degraded priesthood on the ruins of the profane, bestowing on it at last its irrescriptible title of royal. It is Jesus Christ himself who establishes this concept with the shepherds of his flock in order to prepare them as violent and invincible soldiers. So this is, others have thus expressed the same fears. The duration of the Catholic confession, says Archbishop de Prat, depends upon the celibacy of its priests. Let the one fall and the other perishes with it. It would be an act of suicide if the Church of Rome to give up this stronghold. Do Jesuitism, ancient and modern. So, yeah, so pretty much he's just going on and on about celibacy and how the power of it, the power of celibacy is the true power of the Roman priesthood, okay? But the Roman priesthood has become, the youth have become the Roman priesthood, guys. That's where the Jesuit order is. Look at the youth and you'll see the Roman priesthood, okay? So they forced us into the electronic commune that is accessible everywhere at any time, in your hand. It is the Jesuit order. Okay? Now, if they want to make fornication and adultery accessible for everyone anywhere, and they don't want you to be married, how would they do that? How would they get the sensual imagination of the Ignatian spiritual exercises? How do they get it done? Well, they start developing theater and motion pictures and direction and the magic lantern, right? And direct and everything. And then you see like the people who invented or not invented but developed modern pornography. And you see like this type of stuff. So check it out. I have to change the screen. So you got this guy, right? Albert Kirchner, better known under the pseudonym whatever, it doesn't matter. Liar. Was a French photographer, manufacturer, exhibitor, and filmmaker who is noted for producing several religious and erotic films. He was employed by Eugene Peru, a French filmmaker and photographer. Kirchner directed the first known erotic film or pornographic film, whatever, you know? Like Couchière de la Marie. And of course, it's got Mary in it because it all goes back to Rome, right? Anyways. Kirchner made Passion to Christ on behalf of a Roman Catholic publishing company, La Bonne Presse. Can't make this up. Same guy who made the first pornographic film. All right. La Maison de la Bonne Presse was founded in Paris in 1873 by Father Emmanuel de Alzon, also founder of the community of the Augustins of the Assumption. Okay. This guy. We got the Jesuits behind pornography. Educated at the famous legendary College of Claremont, where they created theater for politicians, and it's called Freemasonry. Oh my gosh. It just doesn't get any better than this. So we got the Jesuits behind the first production of this Roman Catholic's pornography film, right? And then there's an explosion of it, right? There's an explosion of it. All right. All right, well, whatever. We won't go into all his stuff, and then we got where is it? This guy who helped director that guy's so this is the director, he was the the writer. This is the director. I don't know, whatever it said. He helped him with the film, this guy. Okay? This guy owned numerous studios in Paris. Also operated one at an old evangelical mission on the Rue Royale. The only evangelical mission on the Rue Royale. Right here. Is this Roman Catholic Church. And yes, this is a Roman Catholic church. It's not a Roman temple. It's a Roman Catholic church. What is the difference? I don't know. You tell me. There is no difference. Anyways, this was created by Napoleon, the great rebuilder of the Jesuit order. There you go. So we got this guy working here, helping Emmanuel Dalzone produce the first pornography. All right. There you go, guys. And then so it's pretty much, and so yeah, here's this Morton A. Hill. Father Morton A. Hill, S.J., 1917 to 1985, was the leader of the campaign against pornography in 1960s, 70s, 80s. Yeah. Was he really? Okay. Check out this. According to the Morality and Media site, he was influential in the Reagan administration, a Knight of Malta. The Jesuit order is the Ecclesiae Militantis Regimini, or whatever, the church militant. They're here to destroy us. Why the hell would they campaign against pornography when we just found out the Catholic Church is behind it and they want you to be celibate? They want you to be celibate, guys. Did we not just read about fornication and adultery? Father Morton A. Hill is a fraud, okay? Richard Nixon, who's a Jesuit confessor, was who was it? Not Drennan, the other guy. I forget. He had a Jesuit confessor, Nixon. Anyways, the point is, we're getting all over the place. This guy, anti-pornography. Check out this, though. Okay? So, where is it? Okay, so look. He was the founder of the Morality and Media, which was created in 1962, yeah? Under Lyndon B. Johnson, who was a devout Roman Catholic. And And who's the president after Lincoln? You know, who's the president after Lincoln? Something Johnson? Andrew Johnson? Andrew Johnson after Lincoln's assassinated. And then we got Lyndon B. Johnson after Kennedy's assassinated. Anyways, devout Roman Catholic, went to Catholic. He got inaugurated in or flown in with a Jesuit Bible, whatever you call it. I forget what it's called. Missile. Sworn in on a Jesuit missile on the plane. Okay. And just like Biden. On the Jesuit, what is it? What's the Jesuit Bible? What's it called? The Dewey Rames. There you go. Anyways, so this guy, 1962, right? To fight pornography. That's when he starts. But check out this. Check out this. Golden Age of Porn. 1969. It ended in 1984. So, right when he gets in, the golden age of porn blows up before he gets in, before he goes in. And then it ends or whatever. And, you know, it ends in the late 80s or whatever. And so, you know, and during this time, it was Father Robert Drinan who made abortion legalized. And he was a member of Congress, a Jesuit, a member of Congress. Oh my gosh. I thought there was a separation of church and state. Oh no. Guess not. So abortion's legalized. Pornography, the golden age, begins right after this Jesuit becomes the the pornography task force, the pornography virus task force. He's a member of the pornography White House task force, and it just completely fails under him. So I wonder if he did anything good. And then, I guess not. And then check out this. Carl Rayner talked about a lot in his books. This woman who was educated at Xavier University. What's her name? Elizabeth T. Grope. She's a professor at Theologia Jesuit University of Xavier, or Xavier University. She has a book called, where is it? Seeing with the Eyes of the Heart, Cultivation of Sacramental Imagination. So so the Catholic Church always talks about how like the way to get over pornography is to imagine it rather than to act it, or like masturbation is to imagine it rather than to act it. So think about that for today. That's what the real spiritual exercises are. To imagine the sensory imagination. What is the sensory imagination of the Jesuit though? It is the theater. It's the theater. It's the music. It's the pixels, the square pixels. They've created a whole new world. Like all the CGI of the space and the viruses. It's all pixels. All right. This Carl Rayner talks about it. He talks about how like the spiritual exercises are like he's the one who developed sacramental sacramental imagination. So imagining the sacraments through the Ignatian spiritual exercises to get over sexual immorality, according to him. You think Carl Rayner was a sexual immoral person? I don't think so. So now we can read some other stuff. Check out this. Bellarmine. Oh my gosh. Bellarmine, he was one of the Jesuits. Where'd it go? Yeah, Jesuit Cardinal Joseph Bellarmine. Oh my gosh. Jesuit Cardinal Joseph Bellarmine was the first to promulgate the origin of the ancient Essenic and Satanic bold idea respecting celibacy, which is homosexuality and pedophilia. That's like the ultimate aim of it, right? The ultimate culmination of it all. And For those who have made a vow of continence, it is a greater crime to marry than to give themselves up to continence. Joseph Cardinal Rebellion. It is monks. This is what the book is called, Monks, chapter 2, page 30. What did Paul say? Marriage is honorable and all, and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and breakers of wedlock, Yahweh will judge. The whore is the whore of Babylon. www, guys. www. www. Vav, vav, vav. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh. Okay. I can't spell. I don't know if you noticed. But check high sky stigma. High sky stigma, the mark of the beast. Or the number of the beast, rather. Yeah. Sex. 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 That's the number of the beast. Right? World Wide Web 666. Okay. Come on now. This is not what we want. Vav, vav, vav. Whatever. Vav, vav. 666. 6 is the vav. 60. The vav. It's the W. V. W. Ooh. Right? 666. So, we've got the internet. If you choose to use the internet in the way they want you to, you will have a seared conscience, a reprobate spirit. You shall be a whore of Babylon, the mother of all harlots. You shall be a whore of her. And yeah, you shall be fornicating with her and only her. Right? Because that's what they want us to do. Look at the youth, guys. Look at the youth. They forced us in. They don't want you to have employment. They want you to, I don't know what they want you to do, but they obviously don't want you to have anything. No property. They want you to be a monk. The internet is the monastery. The commune, the reduction. Okay? They want you to be monks. They want you, and remember what Ignatius said about the freaking the monks. He said they're stupid. Right? Look. What is this in? Okay, this is in the Monita Secreta. The whatever we call it. Secret Instructions of the Jesuits, written by Jesuit Claudia Aquaviva. Says, the favor of the nobility and superior clergy, once got, our next aim must be to draw all cures and canonships into our possession for the more complete reformation of the clergy, who heretofore lived under a certain regulation of their bishops and made considerable advances toward perfection. And lastly, let us aspire to abbacies and bishoprics, and obtaining which, when vacancies happen, will very easily be effected, considering the supineness and stupidity of the monks. For it would entirely tend to the benefit of the church that all bishoprics and even the apostolic see should be hooked into our hands, especially should his holiness ever become a temporal prince over all. Wherefore, let no methods be untried with cunning and privacy by degrees to increase the worldly interests of society. And then, no doubt, a golden age of fornication will go hand in hand with the universal and lasting peace and divine blessing of the consequence attend the Catholic Church. And divine blessing and consequence attend the Catholic, whatever. So, we're seeing this is what the universal apostolic preferences are, right? Wow, my camera's off that whole time. Sorry. And then, so this is the universal apostolic preferences, right? So we got the universal apostolic preferences of the Jesuit order from 2019 to 2029. And Arturo Sosa, showing the way to God, right? Discernment in the Cave, an Ignatian digital retreat for the universal ecumenical mission, Inquisition. Contemplative activity. That's what pornography is. That's what celibacy is. Watching pornography is celibacy, guys. I don't know how else to explain it. That's what it is. There's no other way around it. You're a monk. You're a Jesuit if you participate in sensory imaginative fornication through electromagnetic devices. Like, how much more satanic could it be? You're connecting your body with an image that the Jesuits believe is the church and the sacraments and the body of Christ, literal, and the Virgin, Baphomet, into your mind on a black scrying mirror that uses electromagnetic pressure from the ionosphere, which is the firmament, the ether. This is the Rosicrucian Acta Lactomorum. The binding between the macro and the micro, the molecule, the atomism, right? Like, this is all their Gnosticism. The what's inside of you to the constellations above, right? Connecting it all to that. So the universal, look, we got the egg of Isis, of George Lemaitre's Big Bang, of the Big Bang, the big circle jerk of the Roman clergy. So, journeying with the youth, showing the way to God, walking with the excluded. This is the universal apostolic preferences, starting with COVID-19. Arturo Sosa said it. We've mentioned it 1,000 times on the Cerrucci Team Briefs, yeah? Go check it out. I got a Facebook post about it from like March or something. And then here I'll just read it to you. The universal apostolic preferences, and we'll end it there. I don't even know where it is. Found it. His name, what is it? What isn't it? Peter Hans Kolvenbach? That's who wrote it. The universal apostolic preferences. Oh man, I don't know where it is. I always do this. The universal apostolic preferences. Can you see this? All right. Says, show the way to God, spiritual exercise and discernment, to walk with the poor, the outcasts of the world, those who dignify have been violated, the mission and exile, just blah, 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 blah. Care for our common reductionist system. So, show the way to God through spiritual exercises, sensory imagination, without being able to socialize with the other sex, right? Because you can't leave, or you're told not to leave. Of course, you can do whatever you want, right? That's the whole trick. It's not a trick at all. But think about it. If no one think about it, guys. For you that already have a, what do you call it? For you that already have a husband or wife, it's easy for you but like think about the generation I live in, where if I wanted to go talk to a woman, she would not trust me, right? Because of certain, like, I don't believe it's real or whatever, right? So then there's this whole thing about you're not a Roman citizen because you don't believe in certain what do you call it? Superstitions, right? You can't be allowed to leave the commune. Everyone in the commune must be celibate. Everyone in the reduction system so everyone speaks the same language. So there's no trust in order to have a family anymore, right? Giving in marriage, that's what they'll be doing in the end days. You know, drinking and giving in marriage. What kind of marriage? A wireless electromagnetic one with no contact? Fornication and adultery? They don't want families. They don't want be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. They don't want that. They don't want you to subdue the earth. They want agrarianism, where everyone's not allowed to touch anything on the earth because you've stolen from us. You've stolen from the church. And they don't want you to have a husband or a wife. So this generation that's coming up, all they do is watch pornography. Everything is hypersexualized. Twitch is just softcore pornography, prostitution, and a brothel. And that's all they watch all day. They speak in Twitch language. You should go look up Twitch language. That's what they speak. And I'm not even joking. That's what they speak. They don't speak anything else. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm from a generation. I was born in 1997. The kids are they're gone. It's over for them. I'm sorry. But they're completely lost their minds. So that's about that. And they've created them completely celibate. They're completely celibate. Too afraid to go outside and talk to the male or the female. And so they forced them into hypersexual fornication and adultery through pornography. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at? This is the completion of the Acta Latorum. This is the completion of the Jesuit Counter-Reformation. And to them, it's showing the way to God. Making the whole entire world a crucified people in order that they may be resurrected. Completely different being. All right. Guided by the spirit of the Wi-Fi of the internet. The common home. Not to go outside. Not to leave your concentration camp. All right. (2019 to 2020). There you go, guys. That's the universal electromagnetic priesthood that's all around us right now. The youth have become the Jesuits. And there's how. Yep. All right, guys, we'll end it there. It's kind of a smorgasbord of information, but, you know, that's the way I work, and that's the way it's going to go. So we'll see you guys next time on Wednesday. And hopefully we'll talk about something else. And we'll see you guys later. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, turn on the bell notification. Follow me on all the stupid, useless shit in the bottom, in the description below. I'll link all the things that referenced and read in pinned as the top comment. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Me rambling on and on and on. And I'll read the live chat after.